Welcome back to Ben's Book Club. Today, we're diving into the book, The Manifestation Code, 12 Powers to Make Your Wishes Come True. In this explainer, we're going to unpack the fascinating, structured concepts laid out by life coach Raymond Samso. If you've ever felt like your personal goals are just kind of out of reach, no matter how hard you try, this is going to be an incredible journey into the actual mechanics of deliberate life design. Traditional goal setting usually relies on pure external hustle, right? Just grinding day in and day out, hoping for a breakthrough. But Samso argues that true achievement starts entirely within your internal state, way before you take a single physical step. It's a totally different paradigm for success. What we're really unpacking here today is Samso's complete system for turning pure intention into physical reality. And let's be clear right off the bat, we aren't just talking about wishful thinking or crossing your fingers and hoping for the best. Instead, Samso frames his method as a highly structured, spiritual technology. Think of it almost like an operating system for your mindset. When you update the software on your computer, the machine automatically starts processing information differently, right? It yields completely new outputs. That's exactly how this framework operates. It bridges the gap between what you internally intend and the material reality you actually experience. So it's about shifting away from the passive act of just desiring something from afar and moving directly into the active, systematic creation of your own life. It's a question we've all asked ourselves at some point, isn't it? Why do some people just effortlessly land incredible opportunities while others grind away for years without seeing any real results? To answer this, Samso introduces a concept he calls the trap of wanting, which is the perfect hook to really grasp his broader philosophy. Think about the last time you were desperately waiting for a text back from someone. You were probably staring at your phone with this anxious, needy energy. Well, that feeling is exactly what Samso is talking about. He explains that when you desire something desperately, you accidentally create a deep scarcity mindset. By intensely wanting, you're constantly signaling to yourself that you lack the object of your desire. And that needy focus, ironically, pushes away the very goals you're trying to attract. To understand exactly why that trap happens, we have to look at the root of where these desires actually come from. Samso's core premise is that most people fail at manifestation because they operate from fear and ego. Imagine this tangled, anxious knot of ego-driven wanting. It sounds like a constant inner monologue of, I need more money, or I desperately need external validation. It's completely rooted in a profound sense of lack and scarcity. Success, however, comes from shifting out of that tight knot and into a higher state of consciousness, a wide, expansive openness. It's about internally aligning with the essence of your goals from a place of absolute abundance. It's realizing you are fundamentally whole, rather than just constantly playing defense against your current circumstances. Now, what's really interesting about this comparison is the massive contrast it sets up between two very different philosophies. Pop culture absolutely loves the law of attraction, right? The basic idea that if you just sit on your couch, think happy thoughts, and visualize a Ferrari, one is just going to magically appear in your driveway. But Samso vigorously pushes back against that pop psychology approach. Instead, he heavily favors the law of assumption. This means you don't just wistfully think about the thing you want, you actively assume the complete identity of the person who already has it. The fundamental focus here isn't on attracting something outside of you. It's about a profound internal identity shift that changes who you fundamentally are at your core. Let's define this clearly so we can start applying it right away. The law of assumption is about mentally occupying the state of the wish already fulfilled, way before you see any external proof of it in your reality. For example, if your goal is to be a successful author, you don't just sit around wishing for a book deal. You adopt the daily routines, the discipline, and the quiet confidence of a working writer right now. Samso builds this heavily on the mid-20th century concepts of the mystic Neville Goddard, who taught that we have to live from the end result, not of it. This completely shifts you away from the passive waiting room of life and pushes you directly into the active state of becoming. Okay, let's dive into this. Samso organizes his method into 12 specific shifts in awareness, and we can look at a few of those vital core powers right now. First, we have the power of I am, which serves to fundamentally root your new identity. Then, the power of assumption, where you physically and emotionally embody that end state. Next is the power of detachment, which is the challenging practice of letting go of exactly how things will happen. And finally, the power of inspired action, meaning you move forward guided by intuition rather than panic. Samso insists this is a systematic code. It's literally a book of laws meant to be applied in sequence, not just some loose collection of tips. It's a structured mental scaffolding meant to be mastered step by step. Let's zoom in on that last point for a second, because it answers a huge criticism people have about this entire genre. This explainer is definitely not telling you to visualize a new career and then just wait for the universe to Amazon Prime your success straight to your front door.
Look at how Sam So defines inspired action. It's taking physical steps driven by intuition, rather than frantic forced hustle. It's about balancing deep spiritual trust with actual aligned hard work. You still have to put in the effort. You still have to send the emails and build the skills. The difference is that the action you take just feels completely different because it's guided by inner peace and absolute clarity, rather than desperate panic and sheer force.
But let's take a step back and sit in the skeptic's chair for a moment, because this is crucial. A very valid question always comes up when we discuss these topics. Isn't manifestation just toxic positivity repackaged? I mean, we've all seen the dark side of this, where people feel overwhelming guilt for having a single negative thought, convinced they're somehow ruining their manifestation. It's so important that we critically examine this boundary. Where exactly is the line between genuine self-empowerment and simple magical thinking? Are these principles just an oversimplification of the very real complexities of success? Or do they actually serve as a highly valid, robust mindset tool when applied correctly?
To really dissect that, we need to look at the psychological mechanisms at play. We aren't talking about waving a magic wand where you just speak words into a mirror and the universe miraculously bends to your will. Instead, we can view Sam So's method through a much more grounded lens, what we now call identity-based habit change. Think about modern, well-researched concepts, like James Clear's work on atomic habits. Practices like the power of I am might be highly effective simply because when you successfully adopt a new internal identity, your daily behaviors, your microdecisions, and your long-term habits all naturally change to align with that new identity. It's essentially psychological reprogramming masquerading as mystical philosophy.
So, the crucial point is addressing how this actually works in the messy reality of everyday life. Consider this incredibly grounding scenario. How do you just detach from an outcome when your rent is due next week? This represents the core tension of power number 11, the power of detachment. Sam So tells us to release our attachment to how or when the outcome arrives. But acknowledging this tension is vital, right? It's incredibly difficult to cultivate inner stillness when you're facing immediate financial pressure. Sam So suggests navigating this by focusing on the ultimate feeling of security itself, rather than obsessing over the exact channel the money has to come from. It's about trusting the broader process while still taking the pragmatic, necessary steps in the present.
Let's move to and see how this builds into the grand finale of the book's methodology. Sam So ties the previous 11 powers together into what he calls the miracle process. It's a 3-step, highly repeatable technique. First up, single reality awareness, recognizing that your consciousness is the raw material of your life. Second, assume the identity, fully occupying the feeling of the wish fulfilled. And third, gratitude in advance. This one is like sending a heartfelt thank you note before the gift even arrives. It forces your brain out of a state of waiting and into a state of having already received. This process takes all those abstract spiritual concepts we've talked about and distills them into a highly actionable daily routine.
Which brings us to a practical application for you to try this week. Here is your 7-day gratitude challenge based on power number 9. For the next 7 days, I challenge you to give thanks before the desire physically appears in your life. Choose one specific, deliberate life design goal right now. Apply this gratitude in advance to it daily to deeply anchor your belief. Treat the situation as if the outcome is already entirely secure. Don't worry about the how, just express the gratitude. Simply observe how your internal emotional state, your stress levels, and ultimately your daily actions naturally shift over the course of the week.
Finally, I want to leave you with a rather provocative claim Sam So makes in the text. He suggests that in the future, failing to intentionally design your life will be considered a form of spiritual illiteracy. It's a bold, highly deterministic thought, but it certainly sparks curiosity, doesn't it? It makes you profoundly question how deliberately you are currently shaping your own reality. Are you writing the script or just reading the lines given to you? It's a powerful idea to reflect on as you go about your day, so subscribe so you don't miss an episode.